This is the weekly review help page for the test review for graphing lines. A couple things to pay attention to. You're not writing the equation of a line every time, so make sure that you read the problem. That's always a good idea, but in this one especially, you might be doing more. So like this says find the slope. This question could ask you to find the equation of the line, but it says find the slope. So make sure that you're reading the question. So to find the slope here, you'd use the formula. Find the slope here, you'd pick 2 points and calculate rise over run. To find the slope for number 3, I would just pick 2 points, find the slope. If you want to double check, pick the other 2, find the slope. They're assuming it's a line. Number 4, to find the slope, you need to solve for y. So you get the y alone. Just goes back to that very first thing we talked about. So now you have the slope and the y-intercept. Second part of the test. Review. If I can slide this up here. Technology issues. There we go. Okay. Second part is finding intercepts. And it's easy if you have a picture. It's not as easy if you don't have a picture. So if you have a picture, just look for the x-intercept and the y-intercept and write them as coordinates. But if you don't, remember the x-intercept is where y is 0. The y-intercept is where x is 0. So you can plug in 0 for y to find the intercept, the x-intercept. You can always graph it, use some extra graph paper and figure out your answer if you're more visual like that. So this is plugging in that value. Make sure you're plugging in for y. So over here, the x-intercept and the y-intercept are just right there. And write them as a coordinate. Again, this is something 0. And this would be 0 something. Again, that's your key value there. If you're not sure what to do, graph it. You all can do it when you graph it. To graph any of these equations, you want to be in slope-intercept form. Pretty good there. You should be able to do that one. This one, make sure you know that the y-intercept is 0 and the slope is 1 over 1. Remember, vertical lines, undefined slope equations are x equals a number. So when you see this, you know that's a vertical line. You kind of have to memorize that. Next set, before you graph them, you can use intercepts if you want. I would just solve for y, put in slope-intercept form, so get the y alone. Divide everything here. Same thing here. Remember, there's a 1 in front of that y. This one, you don't need to do as much work. You could just divide everything by 2. You can always graph by the intercepts. Pick a couple points. Let's skip down to finding the equation of the line. Same 4 steps every single time. Start out with the slope-intercept equation. Do you know the slope? So this one we would just plug it in. This one we would use the slope formula. This one you'd find it from the graph. This one they tell you. So there's just a variety of ways that you get the slope. So you plug in the slope, plug in a point, solve for b, go back to the beginning, rewrite it. The last thing that's on here, parallel perpendicular lines. So parallel lines, as you're figuring out, do I know the slope? If it's parallel, yes I do, it's the same slope. If it's perpendicular, I need to write this slope as a fraction and take the opposite reciprocal slope. So then you're right into y equals mx plus b. There's your m. Plug in a point to find b. Plug in a slope, plug in a point. Plug in a slope, plug in a point. X and y intercept to graph those. I would get a graph out and look, because most of you are pretty good when you can see it. If you want to make a graph that way, but you also can write those as coordinates. That's the x-intercept, that's the y-intercept, and use those as your 2 points when you're doing the slope process. Make sure you go back and work on your Khan Academy, especially the line graphs. The last few assignments, needed to practice those before you're ready for this test.